Good morning. Welcome to the Big Cypress. It's a beautiful foggy morning, a little foggier than I was hoping for, but the sunrise is right about now, so I'm starting to see things unfold here, a little more detail, at least in the close objects. What I'm doing today is I'm coming out here with my telephoto lens. So I have my 70 to 400 attached to the gimbal head. And I'm going to talk about how I use that, hopefully, as I capture some scenes here. So this area is very flat, and you look around. In fact, let me take my iPhone, and I'm going to do a 360 here so you can see what I'm seeing. And, you know, with the fog, we're not going to see a lot, but that's what I'm pointing my lens at right there. And you can see here in the middle, there's a cypress dome off in the distance. And look at, you know, everything's kind of flat looking. And then you have a forest over here, a little more dense going on. And starting to see some definition in the trees as the light, you know, gets brighter. And when I come out here, it's very wet. So I just show you what I have going on here. So this is what I'm walking in, these tall grasses, and I've got my boots on. What I do is I bring this IKEA bag with me, and I do that to lay my backpack, which is not waterproof, and lay it in there with all the camera equipment, and yeah, and just kind of find a spot, wander around, and you know, try to find something to photograph. So anyway, so that's the Big Cypress. Okay, now I've done a video before about using telephoto lenses for landscape type shots. So I go into a lot more detail with the advantages as well as some of the disadvantages of the telephoto and some of the things you need to be careful with. Among other things, the lower depth of field that you get with the greater focal length. However, remember, the greater the focal length is, the farther away are going to be your subjects. So that problem with depth of field is really not a problem because you don't have near objects and far objects that you have to work with like you would with a wide angle. So with the telephoto, everything is pushed farther away. And right now, I am focused on those trees that are right in front of me. And I'm guessing right now, but I'm going to guess that they're a couple 100 feet away. So, you know, so basically, you know, there's no depth of field because all I want really in the scene are those trees and maybe some of the grasses that are in front of them. So let me show you what I'm seeing here, including all the mosquitoes that are landing on the camera. There's one on top there. You can see right there. Anyway, so there's the scene. And again, these are trees that are 200 feet away, and you can see my settings there. Note that I have the histogram showing up on the bottom right. Always like to have that, and notice that everything is falling within, I've got all the pixels showing up within the histogram, so the exposure for me is good. I'll be able to work with that really well in Photoshop if I decide to keep this shot, which I'm not sure I will. But anyway, that's the setup, and also note that my lens is attached, as it should be, not by the camera, but by the lens, and I am using the gimbal head. The gimbal head is nice because I can adjust it back and forth horizontally like this. I can adjust it here, up and down, angle it up, angle it down. I can also adjust my lens itself, and I can make this a vertical shot. Very easy to make those changes. So that might be something I might do a little bit later. So that's my setup with the telephoto lens. Okay, so the other thing that's going on here is notice that I don't have a cable release or a remote control for the shutter button. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm using the timer, and that's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just being lazy. Anyway, what I do is I set the drive mode to the self-timer, And that means when I hit the shutter button, I just have to wait however many seconds I set it for it to take the shot. And I have 3 choices with this camera. Typically you're going to have 2-second or 10-second choice, but this camera gives me 2-second, 5-second, and 10-second self-timer choices. So, so which one do I choose? Well, 10 seconds just seems too long for me. I'm not putting myself in the shot, so so 10 seconds I won't use. 2 seconds for this type of setup to me is too short. And the reason for that is remember, one of the disadvantages of the telephoto lens is that camera shake. Even though I have it on a tripod, as soon as I hit that shutter button, there's going to be a little bit of shake. And I want to give the camera and lens time to settle down. And 2 seconds might be long enough, but 5 seconds is definitely long enough. So 5 seconds works for me for this setup. Okay, I was about ready to give up and call it a morning, but as I was walking out, things are getting a little more defined here as it gets brighter, but I've found these really cool grasses that I really liked as a foreground, and I'm still going to use that telephoto lens and try to bring that distant background closer, so kind of compress the scene. I think it'll look really nice. So let's see what happens. This fog is just relentless. I mean, it felt like it was going to clear up, and I was starting to see a little sunlight, and then it got all foggy again, and now it's starting to clear up a little bit. So while I was setting up with these grasses in the foreground, I was having a really hard time focusing because there's just so very little contrast going on here. It's very subtle. But I was finally able to hone in on the grasses and focus on that. Now I have it in a vertical orientation, and what I did is I raised it up a little bit higher than eye level because I wanted that those grasses in the foreground to be separated from that tree that's in the background. So raising it up gave it a little more breathing room between those two. The disadvantage is that even though I'm really tall, I have to really kind of struggle to look through that viewfinder because I can't really see the back panel that well from down here. But anyway, so that's working. So I'm going to keep playing with these grasses and see what we can do, and that's what you have to do. Just keep trying. Well, it ended up not being too bad of a morning. I think I managed to get some pretty good shots. It was just fun just being out here, but I highly recommend a telephoto lens for your landscape. And if you haven't already, please check out that previous video I did on telephoto lenses for landscapes. And I mean, once you understand how to use it, and once you have a nice setup, like a gimbal head, you want to make sure it's nice and firm on that tripod. You can do all kinds of things with that telephoto lens. And I tried to do some stitching, taking some shots, one right after the other, kind of panning across the scene. Not sure how well those turned out, but that's the other thing you can do, because you're compressing the scene, so you really don't have to worry about that distortion that you get with the wide-angle lens. So just go ahead and pan across. Just make sure you got a nice even horizon, and you can stitch those together to make a nice big print. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. At least you got to see the big cypress in the fog.